Welcome to Anews. I'm Umar Taslim and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. After 2 years of relentless bloodshed that left more than 67,000 Palestinians dead, negotiators in Sharm el-Sheikh have secured a long-awaited ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The deal, brokered by Türkiye, Egypt, Qatar and the United States, follows marathon talks under a 20-point peace framework that includes hostage exchanges, phased Israeli withdrawals and the reconstruction of Gaza's war-torn infrastructure. President Erdogan welcomed the agreement as a diplomatic breakthrough for regional stability, calling it a step towards lasting peace and justice for Palestinians. As aid convoys prepare to enter Gaza and displaced families hope to return home, the world now watches whether this ceasefire will finally hold after 2 years of unimaginable devastation.
Israel and Hamas agreed on Wednesday to the first phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, sparking celebrations by Palestinians in the coastal enclave in the early hours of Thursday morning. The agreement reached through indirect talks in Egypt. Trump said on Truth Social that the sign-off by Hamas and Israel on the first phase of the plan meant that, quote, all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line. Hamas confirmed it had reached an agreement to end the war, saying the deal includes an Israeli withdrawal from the enclave and a hostage prisoner exchange. Israeli officials believe that of the 48 hostages held by Hamas, 20 are still alive. A Hamas source said the living hostages would be handed over within 72 hours of the Israeli government approving the deal. An Israeli government spokesperson said the hostage release was expected to begin on Saturday. The accord, if fully implemented, would bring the two sides closer than any previous effort to halt a war that had evolved into a regional conflict, deepened Israel's international isolation, and reshaped the Middle East. However, as has been the case with previous peace efforts, crucial details are yet to be spelled out, including the timing, a post-war administration for the Gaza Strip. Two sources familiar with the talks confirmed that sticking points included the mechanism for the Israeli withdrawal, with Hamas seeking a clear timeline linked to the release of hostages and guarantees of a complete pullout by Israeli forces. The next phase of Trump's plan calls for an international body led by Trump and including former British Prime Minister Tony Blair to play a role in Gaza's post-war administration. Arab countries which back the plan say it must lead to eventual independence for a Palestinian state, which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says will never happen. Hamas has said it would relinquish Gaza governance only to a Palestinian technocrat government supervised by the Palestinian Authority and backed by Arab and Muslim countries. It rejects any role for Blair or foreign rule of Gaza. Hamas has also so far refused to discuss Israel's demand that Hamas give up its arms. A Palestinian source close to the talks said Hamas would reject that demand as long as Israeli troops occupy Palestinian land. Earlier on Wednesday, Trump said that he may travel to Egypt this weekend, possibly leaving as soon as Saturday.
Welcome to the program. Dr. Mehmet Çelik, Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Omar.
Dr. Mehmet, of course, this is good news. We have hope, but at the same time, we have skepticism as well. And you know, Mehmet, this reminds me of what you said a few episodes ago. You said that it will only take a few seconds to get the ceasefire done. And this is exactly what happened. Now, Hamas and Israel, both of them, have agreed to the first phase of this ceasefire, which will see Hamas releasing hostages, the 20 hostages who are alive and who are still in Gaza. Mehmet, how are you looking at this? And, you know, going back to what you said, it was very easy, wasn't it?
Well, it was easy, but at the same time, that a factor that needed to make it happen was not present there. And that factor was the pressure of the United States. From one side, on the other hand, the willingness from Israeli side to accept a ceasefire. And of course, the conditions of a ceasefire is another factor that would push the sides to meet and negotiate to launch a ceasefire. Now, of course, it's good news that the bombing will stop, the attacks will stop, and there is a ceasefire. Of course, it's a positive news that we are going to see the exchange of hostages from both Israel's prisons. The Palestinians will be released, and also the Israeli hostages will also be released. On the other hand, we are, of course, seeing this as a positive step because there will be humanitarian aid delivered into Gaza and to be delivered to the Palestinians in Gaza. The most basic needs are absent at the moment. But this is not the whole picture. This is only the first step, I think, if the sides are willing to, if the international community, or namely the United States, is willing to support a permanent solution or permanent ceasefire or a sustainable agreement to this conflict or to this genocide taking place, I think the days after today will be more important because establishing a ceasefire is declaring a ceasefire is a positive news, but to sustain that ceasefire and to move forward with the new steps for a permanent solution are the fragile moment. As I said, these three things, the ceasefire, delivery of aid, exchange of hostages, is called as the first phase one. But what comes after that is what we are basically approaching with skepticism. There's a lot of skepticism because, first of all, whether this ceasefire will be sustained or not, whether Netanyahu will change his mind and say after the, say I do not want to continue with this ceasefire, or we'll find another excuse to relaunch the offensive and attacks after the hostages are exchanged. We don't know anything about that, and the level of trust between the international, when it comes to international observers, level of trust to Netanyahu's side, it's very low. Because previously he has broken the terms and negotiations had stopped. In addition to that skepticism and reliability of the ceasefire holding, what will happen to Gaza? What will happen to Palestine? What will happen to those who are displaced? What will happen to rebuilding Gaza, a reconstruction of Gaza? Those are very vague in terms in that 20-point plan that Donald Trump announced. But I think so far we need to look at for today at least, we need to look at the full side of the glass with those questions and skepticism in mind. And I think it needs to be recognized that the regional governments, regional states like Egypt, Qatar, and Türkiye very strongly contributed to this meeting at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Turkish intelligence chief Ibrahim Kalın was there. Mr. Erdogan and Foreign Ministry has been following this issue very closely, and so they hailed the steps that allowed for the ceasefire to take place. Donald Trump's contribution to this is perhaps significant, and that's why Mr. Erdogan also congratulated him and thanks for his support. And nevertheless, I think for Palestinians, this ceasefire is only the beginning. It should be only the beginning of an end to this catastrophe, to this destruction, to this genocide that has been taking place since October 7, 2023. So it's been more than 2 years that we're seeing. Only thing we're seeing is bloodshed and tears and a bleeding wound that right now a Band-Aid is put on. But for that bleeding wound to stop, an actual treatment, and that is a two-state solution, is necessary. A Palestine governed by Palestinians, even if it is going to be a transitional period, the governing body or the board must consist of Arab and Palestinian leaders and technocrats or other figures that will have influence on Palestinian community, Palestinian people as a whole, not just one faction or one group. And I think including external figures, especially controversial names, will only be an obstacle on the path to peace rather than something constructive.
Mehmet, and also it's really sad when you think about it that they're being punished for something that they did not even start. And some people will say it started on the 7th of October when Hamas attacked the Israelis and abducted 1,200 people, killed them. It did not start on October the 7th, 2023. It started 50 years ago. It started 70 years ago. It started when all of those policies, when the Zionism, the idea was being pushed forward in the Middle East. Anyway, Mehmet, I want to look at the statements right now made by European leaders. Firstly, Keir Starmer, who, by the way, is on a 2-day visit to India, he has said that this agreement must now be implemented in full without delay and be accompanied by the immediate lifting of all restrictions on life-saving humanitarian aid to Gaza. Like you just mentioned, aid has started to pour into Gaza. Now, those areas have been opened, especially the Rafah border crossing. Ursula von der Leyen says that the parties must uphold the agreement's terms. EU's policy chief Kallas says EU will do whatever it can to support its implementation. Similar statements from Meloni, Macron. But like you mentioned, Mehmet, Ibrahim Kalin was also there, and he is obviously the intelligence chief. How important was his role in this meeting? And also Qatar, because Qatar was attacked and Qatar did not bow down to the Israelis or the Americans. Qatar said we will continue with the negotiations. How are you looking at that?
Well, first of all, I think that there's, to answer your question, at 3 levels, the European and the Western remarks and Western public opinion on Israel and the issue. Second is Turkey's position, and third, Qatar. When it comes to Europe, I mean, European leaders' position changed. I think what is more important is that this change took place because of a change, because of a collective stance when it comes to Western public opinion on Israel and on what's taking place in Gaza. That groundswell when it comes to the solidarity with Palestine, but more importantly, the standing against the injustice committed by the hands of Israelis, that groundswell was able to put pressure on the governments and in European capitals to change their position, even if it is at the rhetorical, even if it is at the rhetoric level, and in their statements, that changed a lot. Recognition of Palestinian state is a result of this public opinion. This means one thing for Palestinians, but for Israelis, I think, in the long term, this is something that will not fade away very easily. The position of Israelis in the European or Western public opinion will not fade away because, what they did in these past 2 years has was carved very deeply in the minds of the people in the international community. So Palestinian, Israeli intellectuals, Israeli celebrities, Israeli politicians, Israeli sports people will not be very, there will always be a distance between that public opinion at the people level and the Israelis. I think this is something, this is a harm that Netanyahu's cabinet did to Israelis more than any other factors about that, that Zionist ideology. This is one thing. So that permanent, it's a very strong damage done to Israel's image in European capitals at the people's level. That will stay there for a very long time, I'm afraid.
Mehmet, if I may, sorry to interrupt you. Do you think Israel is going to be isolated like Iran in the next few years? Do you think that could be a possibility if sanctions are enforced on Israel?
That's a very good question, but I think the influence of Zionist lobby, especially through financial terms, may minimize the effect of that. But Iran is isolated, even in its region, if you think about it, to a certain degree. So given its economic power, military power, or in terms of ideology, Iran's influence is not as supported by the international community as is Israel. I mean, the whole European community, European elites support Israel. The Western world support Israel. Other countries, they support Israel due to the pressure coming from the financial lobbies across Western world. So that isolationism, I mean, to isolate Israel from European capitals is not as easy. But to isolate Israel from people's mind, I think that's already something that Netanyahu did to the Israelis in the eyes of the people in the international community. And this is something that Israeli war cabinet did. Nobody else promoted these negative image about Israelis or the Jewish community or the other elements of that worldview other than Netanyahu himself. I mean, what they did in Gaza in the past 2 years, the genocide, the killing, the destruction, the killing of babies and children, using starvation as and famine as a weapon, it is not something at this age, something easy that will be forgotten when there is, I mean, the image is very clear. And that is carved in people's mind. To minimize the effect of that, I'm not sure how long it will take. But right now, it's a very strong dent put in that. When it comes to Turkey's position, for Turkish government, for Turkish state, for Turkish people and the public opinion, Palestinian issue, I mean, Palestinian struggle and standing in solidarity with Palestine, it's not a political strategy. It is something that is deeply engraved in their hearts, in their minds, in their souls, in their everyday work when it comes to the struggles that Palestinians go through. And this is an issue held above politics for the Turkish society. So, I mean, when we look at Mr. Erdogan, this is not a political strategy for him when it comes to the issue of Palestine. It is something that he has devoted his life, his political career to that struggle. He's from day one, he's been supporting that. His cabinet is the same. His AK Party members are the same. There's no even a slight difference in opinion when it comes to Palestine. When it comes to his voter base, there is a very strong attachment to the Palestinian cause. But aside from the AK Party, the government, and Mr. Erdogan and the state itself, people on the street are attached to the Palestinian cause. And I think this is something that is seen, and this is why Turkey's presence in negotiation table, even if it is unofficial, not in an official format, is felt by the Palestinians. It is not just felt by Hamas, who is on the table negotiating, but it is felt by the Palestinian people in all areas of occupied territories. It is felt by not just Palestinians when it comes to Turkey's sensitivity on the issues that are affecting the Muslim world. It is felt by people in the region as a whole. It is felt in Syria. It is felt in Egypt. I mean, people in Egypt, they know sincerity of Mr. Erdogan when it comes to any issue related to the Muslim world, be it in Palestine, be it in Myanmar, be it in Sudan, be it in Libya, Yemen, or Syria, Iraq, or Azerbaijan. So any issue related to Muslim world, Mr. Erdogan is not just using these issues as a political strategy to influence, to increase his popularity. But Mr. Erdogan's popularity is felt by every citizen in the Middle East, in the Muslim world, or even in Africa when it comes to his solidarity, his standing against the injustices in the Muslim world, the oppression, the occupation, and other conflicts and other injustices taking place around the world. So, I mean, the fact that he has this influence is felt by the Palestinians very dearly, very closely. If you ask any Palestinians, they will have no doubt about Mr. Erdogan's sincerity and Mr. Erdogan's efforts when it comes to bringing this ongoing conflict and ongoing oppression and violence in the occupied territories to an end. And they all, of course, realize he is doing his best. He's doing what he can do as a political leader, as a leader of leader of the Turkish state, Turkish Republic, and he knows that he's doing all he can within his limits. Of course, every state has its limits. Every state has the capacity or capability of taking some actions when it comes to the international community, international affairs, international relations or conflicts, and other issues. But they all have no doubt that sincerity is there, because for Mr. Erdogan, Palestine is not just an issue of international relations. For him, this is an issue that he feels very deep in heart, and this is what, I mean, Mr. Erdogan's political career is built on fighting these injustices, not only within Turkey, but also beyond Turkey's border, in anywhere that affects that affects the Muslim world, and in any geography that there is a bleeding wound, Mr. Erdogan's efforts will be there to a degree that is within his capacity, within his limits, within his material capability, within his political and diplomatic influence. He will try his best to touch there. I mean, when there was a famine in Somalia, I mean, this is a very separate example. In 2011, when no world leaders had gone there, Mr. Erdogan went there. Mr. Erdogan's worked for Myanmar, for Rohingya refugees. When it comes to, I mean, the Syrian refugees, Turkey took more than 5 million Syrian refugees. They opened their doors and homes and hearts, and without any problems, we hosted them for this long. And now Turkey is trying to build stability in Syria. Because of this effect, Mr. Erdogan's and Turkey's presence on this negotiation table, even though it is informal, it is welcomed, it is supported, and it's taken very importantly, not just as a bystander, but Turkey's presence there, I think it puts a sense of power, a sense of strength to negotiation table that will be working towards a solution that will also benefit Palestinians in the long term.
Mehmet, then President Erdogan should deserve the Nobel Peace Prize, right? Because of everything that you have mentioned, and obviously all those actions resonate with us as well. We all are witnesses to what the Turkish president has done over the last few decades. But now Donald Trump is pushing for that Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think he deserves it?
I mean, that's a very, you need to look at the criteria. That's a hard question to answer. I mean, who deserves Nobel Peace Prize?
What's the definition?
Those, I think for me, I mean, I don't know the criteria, of course, the selection committee when they try to make their final decision. What becomes an element that affects their decision, and when it comes to that final phase from the candidates, etc. That I'm not sure, but I mean, previously this discussion was there too when Turkey hosted Turkey was working very hard for the Syrian refugees, and what Mr. Erdogan did in that sense. I don't think it's even Mr. Erdogan's agenda or in his mind whether he received a Nobel Prize or not. This is not why Mr. Erdogan does not do politics to receive recognition from Nobel selection community. This is not his way of politics. For others with celebrity backgrounds, that applause, that recognition may become an highlighting moment for their career. But this is not the case for Mr. Erdogan, a strong political leader that has put his life on the line when it comes to building a very strong Turkey, building a very strong region or supporting people in the region, when it comes to Mr. Erdogan's political career that is devoted to serving people not only within Turkey but also beyond Turkey's borders in many different areas. Mr. Erdogan's political style is not for an applause. What he always says in Turkish, and he says, you know, at the end of the day, we're all going to pass away. We're all going to die. What you will be remembered by is going to go with you to the next world. The rest, it will be forgotten anyways. But what you engrave in people's minds, in people's hearts, the positive impact that you leave behind in your society, in the international community, in the eyes of the people, this will come with you as a reward. So his aim, I don't think it even goes through his mind when it comes to winning a Nobel Peace Prize, when it comes to, I mean, what he does for the Palestinians or other Muslims around the world or his own people. I mean, Turkey's image has changed. Turkey's power has changed economically, militarily, in terms of political influence around the world. I mean, you know, Mr. Erdogan is very strongly highlighted by Donald Trump. We can say that, you know, he's very highly praised by Donald Trump. We can say that, you know, some of this is just praise and political gesture. We can say that the other side is, you know, due to Turkey-U.S. relations, they want to fix it. But there is a big chunk of that praise that is attached to also his political leadership as well, and the strength of his political leadership, the influence of Mr. Erdogan on many different issues around the world, be it from Ukraine-Russia conflict to you know, issues in Horn of Africa, Northern Africa, to the Middle East, to the South Caucasus.
Pakistan, India.
Pakistan, India. So when this is the case, for Mr. Erdogan, Nobel Peace Prize is not something that will capture his attention. At the end of the day, when he knows that people are behind him, when he knows that people have placed him in their hearts and minds, be it within Turkey or abroad, this is something that he values. I don't think he will exchange it for any type of committee given awards. At the end of the day, if you ask me my opinion about who should win, I mean, I think you need to look at who has done what for the people, not only within their country, but also for the international community, and that should be very clear. Then, when you have a very unbiased decision being made, and something that is not politically influenced, then the person that will be elected by the committee will be the well-deserved one. Otherwise, if you put influence on the selection committee, if you put political pressure, financial, all these things, then it becomes hard to see who will win. Nevertheless, Donald Trump wants it. They may as well give it to him. I think he will. For me, I think Donald Trump works better with praise. And if he's going to solve more problems and put more pressure on Israel to stop the genocide, if he is given a Nobel Prize, I think they may as well do that. So he feels better about solving more crises around the world.
Very well said, Dr. Mehmet Çelik. Dr. Mehmet, I'll be right back with you.
Thank you.
A newly announced ceasefire framework is offering cautious optimism for Gaza's future, combining plans for a truce, prisoner exchange, and long-term recovery after months of conflict and humanitarian suffering.
I think it's important to understand that this is two deals put into one, essentially. The first one is a ceasefire and hostage and prisoner swap. The second one deals with Gaza's future and Gaza's governance, transition, disarmament, de-radicalization. And so what we saw announced tonight was specific to the release of hostages and Palestinian prisoners after long and arduous negotiations. I would personally venture out to say that the war is far from over and that we don't know what happens after this phase is over. Hamas is not only counting on guarantees from President Trump to pressure Israel and Netanyahu not to restart the war, but they're also imagining and speculating, based on what I've gathered, that with the hostages being out, it's going to be very difficult for Israel to restart the war, that it won't have any legitimacy to re-engage in military operations in the Strip, and that without this cover, without this sense of legitimacy, it would be untenable for Netanyahu and for the Israeli government to re-begin the war, and that this would put it at odds with the international community, but also with President Trump as well. And so that is something that Hamas is counting on to prevent the restarting of the war after giving up all of its chief negotiating leverage point. We need to address issues related to water, related to the collapsing health infrastructure. And there's two types of health needs. It's not just people hurt by the war, but it's also people with chronic illnesses, people with regular illnesses. It's women's health, it's pediatrics health, it's the cancer patients. And so you have medical needs after the nutrition needs, and that requires materials, equipment, that requires surging capacity. And then you have an issue of the educational system has stopped, it has ceased. All schools have been effectively destroyed or turned into shelters. Students have been out of school now for 3 years, 3 academic years they've been out of school. And so what does it look like to resume that process? And so some of those issues can be addressed in an acute emergency fashion with the surging of aid and capacity. Some of it can only be addressed through long-lasting action like recovery and reconstruction. And that can only happen with the durable peace and end of the war.
Welcome back to the program. Dr. Mehmet, a while earlier I asked you if Israel could be isolated like Iran, and you said obviously Israel is being supported financially, economically. Now, since we now have a ceasefire, what's going to happen to the Abraham Accords? Because this is another way of, maintaining ties with the region, right? You said that Iran is not okay. It does not have good relations with its neighbors as well. But the Abraham Accords are being used to give Israel that power, right, to have more say in the Middle East. Do you think now that the ceasefire is in place, obviously we don't know if it's going to hold or not, do you think that more countries now, like Saudi Arabia, Syria, the UAE is already a part of the Abraham Accords, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Syria, do you think now they could start working to be a part of the Abraham Accords? Do you think that's going to be possible?
Look, whether through Abraham Accords or through other deals or in terms of bilateral relations, normalization is always good in this region. Previously, before October 7, looking at Türkiye, for example, Türkiye had normalized its relations with many countries, including Israel. Herzog, Israeli president, was in Türkiye. Mr. Erdogan was supposed to meet Netanyahu to take the relations to a new phase. Nevertheless, when October 7 happened, of course, this changed the dynamics in the region entirely. What Türkiye and other regional states they say about their relations with Israel is that as long as this issue is bleeding, as long as this wound continues to affect the rest of the body, and what I mean is, as long as there is no solution, as long as there is the occupation and oppression and violence and genocide is continuing, it's not easy for any states to normalize ties with Israel. The day Israel stops this occupation, oppression, violence, and recognize a two-state solution, I think things will normalize anyways. What affects this normalization is Israel's behavior, Israel's constant position and unchanging, uncompromising position vis-a-vis the Palestinians and their future. If that was established, I think it will pave way for normalization, not just only through Abraham Accords, but also through many different bilateral equations and bilateral dynamics in the region. Turkey was normalizing ties with Israel, and many praised that because they said Turkey could maybe more significantly contribute to provide solutions through talking with Israel to the issues of Palestinians. Nevertheless, when the genocide is taking place, when war crimes are being committed, when there is famine and babies are being killed, no states will be willing to, without pressure from an outside factor, would be willing to normalize ties with Israel, because you are either supporting Israel, you're either remaining complicit by remaining idle and not saying I'm not going to take sides, or you stay and support those who are victims in this conflict. I think majority of the international community now have picked sides because this is not a symmetrical war. There's asymmetry here. There are war crimes being committed. There is a genocide taking place. I mean, these have all been. These terms are all not just terminology that I am using, but legal experts are using these. International institutions are using these. This terminology. NGOs, international human rights groups, are using these. IPC said there is a famine in Gaza, a man-made famine. So when this is the case, normalizing ties with Israel makes you a supporter of Israeli actions as well. Of course, if this is solved, no states in this region will be unwilling to normalize ties with Israel. But I'm afraid their uncompromising position and their ultimate aim for occupied territories and beyond makes them isolated from not only from the region but from also the international community. This new phase, the 20-point action plan, is not. This is not a very, I think, sustainable or strong enough plan to normalize ties with Israel yet. If it unfolds and the Palestinians are okay with it, then I think and the region will start to see some normalization. But after this hostage exchange, if delivery of aid is still restricted, if the ceasefire continues to see attacks here and there from the Israeli side, if it is not sustained in a way that will pave way for the phase 2, phase 3, or whatever is going to come afterwards toward a permanent ceasefire and a solution, then I think there will be no Abraham Accords ultimately. At least from states like Saudi Arabia or other countries in the region.
Dr. Mehmet Çelik, thank you so much for that comprehensive analysis. Now we know what exactly is going on in the region, what is being offered to the Palestinians, what is being offered to the Israelis. Thank you so much for letting us know, and also on the Turkish position. Thank you so much for telling us about that as well. That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.